use your full 6 seconds. And they're like, we're like maybe one down or tied, and they're like, I've never heard anyone do that. And I was like, I'm doing it because we had 10 seconds, 20 seconds of pressure on us, and we need that mental reset.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. In this episode, we feature professional female soccer player Lauren Prott. During the time of this interview, the Euro 2022 finals were on. We were embroiled within the fascination of the final and moments that took our eye and caught us at times. This added to the interview, and it was really enjoyable to talk about certain events that happened. But this interview was about Lauren, and it's a great insight into her life and her experience. Lauren is a defender and holding midfielder from the USA, California. She has had a wonderful experience, and while at Butte, Lauren was undefeated in the conference and was crowned Golden Valley Conference champions. Although we talked about an undefeated season, Lauren's actually experienced 6 of them. How many players experience an undefeated season 6 times? That is a wonderful achievement in itself, just one season. But 6 times. This should be spoken about a lot more because that is an amazing achievement within itself. And to be part of that defence which has led to those wins and those conference wins with multiple clubs, Lauren has done an amazing job as central defender. She has had many accolades. In both 2013 and 2014, Lauren was placed on the Conference Carolinas All-Academic Teams list. She was 2014 Female Scholar Athlete of the Month. And in 2015, Lauren was a recipient of the Coaches Award for her hard work and dedication to the team. She has been out in the USA playing as a team captain. She's been out in Australia, Albania playing Champions League football, Norway, Czech Republic, and Sweden. There's many great experiences there that she's had, and many difficult periods in her career that she's experienced to date. And you can listen to this further in the podcast episode and listen to Lauren's insights. Lauren was wonderful to experience and listen to, and it was another fascinating interview with a female soccer player. Listen to the episode, find out more about Lauren, listen to her insights, and there's so much to take away. It was such an enjoyable episode. I'm really grateful of Lauren and her time. Good luck, Lauren, and thank you for this episode. This is the Reflective Coach podcast. You can listen to it on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, and Podcast Addict. You're also able to find the podcast on LinkedIn and Twitter. This is Coach Luca, the Reflective Coach podcast. Okay, I think got a bit of the wrong timing going on here, especially with the England Euro final rolling over. Have you been watching? Well, I've got it on the iPad next to my questions.
I know, I'm watching too. I feel like Germany's got the edge currently.
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope England can pull it back and take themselves into the lead.
We'll see. Their defensive intensity getting back's been a little poor.
Yeah, and you know, in that sense, you know, talking about tactics, which has been nice to actually focus on a little bit of a game for once. You know, they were saying that Germany went out and they tried to get in the heads of the England team. They tried to frustrate them. Do you think that's a good tactic in itself to deploy?
I use it on occasion, usually with usually like the strikers who aren't quite as like mentally sharp. So it's usually the younger ones or the ones I can see get heated. I'll play into their head a little bit. Yeah, I've done it with like a few Australian players. I was like, she complained every time I touched her, and I was like, I would just go like, I didn't realize Aussies were so weak and like couldn't even handle a little touching.
You know, and from that experience, you know, we in work we do like a staff social in terms of sports every term where I work in a secondary, and they do lots of different sports. And the one week they decided to do netball. I've only ever played netball in training. I've never actually played it to the supreme rules. And one of the women that we had there is actually a high qualified county referee, and she called absolutely everything. But she was playing at one point, and every time I got the ball or did something with it, I got called foul and I just had whistle. So it just frustrated me. But then I realised that I got in the head of the player behind me who was a really good county level player for netball. And all I had to do was get in the head, frustrate her, stop her shooting, and then suddenly she wasn't scoring. And it worked completely into my favour.
Yeah, you can definitely do it. It's like it's a pretty good tactic if you know how to mess with players. Like one of my favorite things to do is like when someone's talking shit to me, I just like smile and laugh at them like they're like the most ridiculous person in the world. It just drives them insane.
And it's that flip side of when you just smile at them, it's stopping them from getting into your head. So you have really good game management in the sense to bring to the team.
Yeah, I don't get players are I don't know that anyone's ever got in my head. Oh wait, one. And she sang Christmas carols the entire game in July.
Was that just because she's just so happy and loves Christmas, or just literally trying to get in your head? Oh
No,
no!
it was she was we were like 12 years old, and that's the only player I could ever think getting in my head. But it was like she just loved Christmas. She was singing like Red Off the Red-Nosed Reindeer and like all these different songs the entire game.
And even whilst you're training at that age or just around the players, you're like, well, I'm here to play and I'm going to go off and I'm going to make something of playing. And you can carry on singing Christmas carols when you're well into your 20s.
Well, I still sing to myself when I play on the field. It's like a good way to just like stay in the moment since I tend to think a lot. So like if I listen to music before the game, I'll cut to like a mental thing. If you don't finish listening to the song, your mind's gonna repeat it in your head to try and complete it itself. So I'll cut it off with like a few seconds left in the song, so my brain will play that during the entire game.
And and that's a really good management sense, because so much information can be relayed. You got your teammates around you talking, you're trying to focus on your own game, you're reacting to live situations of what the opposition are doing and how they're playing, how the game's flowing. You've got all the information which your coaches relay to you. You've got the constant updated tactics, you've got fans going on in your ears, you've got what's going on after the game. There's so much going on, and in that sense, can it be really difficult to be on the pitch and comprehend like a million thoughts all in 1 second, and multiply that over a game? Your head must just be like, I need to switch off now.
Uh, yeah, definitely after the first game, it's like I may feel physically fatigued, but like mentally, I'm like just like even the first game this season, I hadn't played like organized soccer in like a few months, and we played against Oregon State in a friendly, and I was like, I told my coach, I was like, physically I was fine, mentally I wasn't used to picking up the other 21 players plus the ball on the game and just trying to figure out all those processes.
And over that course of the season, do you find that you would be more tired mentally rather than physically, or the other way around?
Uh I get less tired physically and mentally throughout the season. It's like my body adapts quicker, and I have really good like recovery methods that I employ. And then mentally, I have to like more challenge myself sometimes, like particularly with American soccer. I'm not going to talk a little bad about it, but it's a little bit more predictable, especially like college age. It's a lot more direct and over the top. So it's more like just reading it ahead of time so I don't have to get into a full foot race with the player I'm chasing.
And in that sense, that can work into your advantage, quite often, and make yourself stand out because, all right, Lauren's reading ahead of the game. She's reading that really well. She's anticipated that. And it helps improve your performance and the way people look at you. So that's only gone on and helped you, and worked in your advantage in that sense.
Yeah, and I even had one player, I think she plays for University of Portland. She's like their star striker. I played with her this season, and she got mad because I kept getting her offsides. And I was like, do people not play you offsides in college? She's like, they do, but they don't like, I step with them to like walk them offsides. And then like a second before the ball's played, I step back and pull them offside. So like they can't have the chance to adjust because I've already done it for them.
And it's about increasing that standards and that expectation whilst you're in and around those players and whilst they're in your presence. And that can show that you're a leader on the pitch and you have been a captain yourself as well. And when you are a captain, is it you're surrounded by a lot more pressures, you're given a lot more responsibility because you have to look after the team, be there for the girls? Is that quite difficult to gauge and manage at times?
I felt like that's pretty easy. I've always said like you lead by example, and I've like always liked to create leaders around me. I think the hardest game this season, I ended up player, coach, and captain in the last game, And that was a lot because I was having to manage substitutions while playing in the game and moving players around as well. So that was just a lot.
And then when you're making that change, you're pulling players around, then suddenly, you've brought a player off or they're playing in a different position. You're the one under criticism and under fire.
Yeah, it was hard. I was like telling my coach, or I had like an assistant coach who was our communications manager, who was like, I was like, hey, this player needs a sub, like give him 5 to 10 minutes and then put him back on. Cause obviously it's like interchange what we're playing at. And it was just like, he's like, yeah, you were a little bit slower, like moving up than you normally are. And he's like, I realized it's because you were also trying to give different players tactical instructions on the field where normally I don't have to do it quite as much.
And in that sense, then, even, it can be quite hard to sort of think about the finishing playing and that aspect, and you just want to focus on playing. But in a lot of in the female game, there's a lot of players that have to combine a second job and working alongside professional soccer, and you do a lot of coaching and a lot of work. But is that difficult to maintain that balance and between professional soccer in terms of playing and a second job as well?
I actually tend to find I do a bit better when I'm coaching as well, just because my mind will drift to other things versus always focusing on my own play. The biggest thing is when I am on my feet all day, I have to like find moments to sit down and practice just so my feet aren't exhausted when I actually go to my games and trainings.
And in that sense, even though you are coaching and you're understanding what it's like to make those changes and how difficult it can be, especially when players react, do you find all of those situations and scenarios that you face as a coach and what you implement benefit you as a player in your approach then?
It was actually the opposite. So my coach said, the WSL coach had me coach the Oregon Open Cup here and then the final game. And he's like, you're just so outspoken as a women's player. Like, I think you'll do fine coaching the women as well. And we were coaching in the championship, and I had my other center back with my assistant coach in the game. And one player was really struggling starting out, like playing on the wing, very nervous. First touch was bad. And I like told my assistant coach, I was like, she's like, oh, we should pull her out. And I was like, no, let her play through it. College coaches never let him play through it. And she ends up scoring the game winning goal off like sick footwork, just like cuts him back and forth and then just places it perfectly. And those are like the best moments as a coach when you let a player play through like the mental blocks they're having.
And in that sense, that's something that you've brought from your game and what you need to, what you may believe that you need to go through as a player and your teammates around you that we need to keep playing, we need to keep pushing. And, implementing that within that kind of session and having that flip around was really beneficial to that player in what you were able to bring to them from your experience as a player.
Yeah, and some of that's just learning how to read your players around you, like figuring out, hey, is it a point where they can come back from, or are they so defeated you have to take them off and reset them?
And in that sense, whilst you've got the Euros on and it's on here, you might end up with these tactical changes that you're making, end up managing in the final in a few years. In that sense, but it's great that you've got that sort of balance between coaching and professional playing. You're able to, bring in an aspect of playing into your coaching, which really benefits the players and then working with coaches who, as you say, bring players off in those scenarios and contexts, which is only going to benefit those players. Whilst you grew up and you came from California, is that correct?
Yeah, California.
That's where my friend has currently moved out to from Wales, and he sends me pictures. I think he was out somewhere last night, and he's putting it on Insta, and he's like, "You should come and move out here." And I was like, "Mate, you've already sold it to me. Give me a few years, and I'll be out there with you." So, it's amazing to come from California. Coming through the system at a young age as a female footballer in the US, was there a really good program for you to come through?
Well, I'm from a small town, so there's only two clubs to choose from. So my first club was a little bit more kickball and maybe more like, I don't know, structured maybe, but not super structured. And then my second team was a lot of 1-2 touch, but a lot of freedom. But only like 8 players would show up to training consistently. But we still won everything surprisingly when I switched over. Um, so I didn't really. I was talking to someone. I didn't learn how to properly strike a ball with my laces till I was in college. And that was just like me asking my coach and my players questions. So
And
like I
that that
develop
that
them.
came back down to you, and those kind of questions which have to be asked, and usually it's difficult in those situations to be in college and ask those type of questions because a coach or other players could look at you and go, "You should know that." and it can be quite difficult in that sense. But when you talk about it, that there's only two clubs to choose from at a young age, was it quite difficult as a youngster then, sort of to be like, right, we got a match day today, we're playing a team who's miles away because there's only two clubs locally, and there's constant travel. Was that quite difficult in that sense?
I never thought about it really, because obviously I wasn't driving. But those teams would always complain when they had to come play us, and I was like, "We do this every weekend. Like, I drove 6 hours for a game one day, and we played, and then drove back. Like, it was just something we did." And now I've gotten better. Like, not obviously 12 anymore, so I have to like do different prep beforehand, and I can like sit in the car with like a lacrosse ball underneath my legs to prevent my hamstrings getting tight. Just different things now, obviously, when you travel a bit longer.
And there's those added, things that people don't see, and especially how difficult it can be for girls coming up and young through the system. In here, the game in Wales for females is slowly improving. But I was talking to a female player back last year, and she was saying when she was growing up that she would have to travel hours on end just on a typical Sunday just to play games against other girls' teams, and when you're a young player and you're a young boy, and you literally got 13 teams on your doorstep, and most of them are in a half-hour drive every week, and you're thinking, right, you're a young girl in that sense, the same age, but you've got to travel a few more hours. It makes you think and look back as an adult from those young players how much they have to commit, even more than a boy in that sense, just to go and play some games.
Yeah, luckily we were pretty like tight group, so we would like do sleepovers and like just hang out during like the longer games, driving away and stuff. And like one time we got stuck in traffic for like an hour, and we're all walking between the cars, talking to each other and just hanging out.
And in that sense, it creates even more, unity and even more enjoyment around the game of football, because it's not always easy to enjoy football for what it is. And I'm sure you've coached boys and you've coached girls and also played with girls, but are girls more easygoing than boys in that sense at times?
Uh Boys tend to be more that I've dealt with, like think like they know the game, and they'll be like 8 years old, and I was like, there's so much more to learn. Like even like I can still learn things from different players I didn't know. And like girls tend to take on information a little bit better, where boys will be like, oh yeah, right, whatever.
And boys in that sense can be a little bit more arrogant, and they can refuse to take on that information, or be in a sense of as you say, that they believe that they know everything, whereas girls just want to learn. They're quite easy to adapt. They just want to soak everything up. And I've coached girls and boys, and when I've coached girls, I've come away going, oh, I really enjoyed that, I can't wait to coach them again. And there's been times when I coach boys going, oh, I gotta coach them again next week. And girls are so easygoing, and they just want to soak everything up, really.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten that. I've had like, I mean, even I sometimes coach myself getting a bit arrogant. I was like in a game and I had my players position me. I was like, I know where to be. And I'm like, just get over yourself. And like, they're trying to make us all better. So just do it, and like, we'll make it work together.
And it's that unity which you can bring together as girls, and bring that together. And that unity at times can be so important because you've actually experienced an undefeated season as a player. And what was that like to experience that undefeated season?
I've actually had like 6 undefeated seasons throughout my like whole playing career, which is pretty crazy.
So your valuation should be really high as a player. You should be top of everyone's scouting profiles.
Yeah, it's definitely. I feel like I have more intangible things than like I'm a center back, so my stats don't necessarily show high. But yeah, it's always fun to have those undefeated seasons. It's definitely like the team unity. Like on one team, me and the other center back were just so competitive with each other. We didn't want the other ones to win, so we could never be on the same team in training. But like in the game, like we pushed each other to be better because of it.
And in that sense, when you talk about undefeated season, most people strive for an undefeated season, especially in males football. But in that sense, you just brush it off as that's just another season for me. They're common in my play.
I don't know. I was pretty mad this last year, or this last season we lost our very last game, so we would have gone 2 seasons undefeated.
Oh,
So I was like,
incredibly frustrating. Just one game away, minutes away. And in that sense, when you're over a course of a season and you are building and you're in touching distance of that undefeated season, does the pressure add on even more towards the end of the season, or do you find yourselves more sailing, going, let's just keep going, we're going to do this?
I think the biggest issue can be like complacency. So like you have to try and keep like that fire throughout the season. So like if I'm like maybe a little bit more chill one game, I call myself like ice, and then I have to find someone that's fire just to like heat me up a bit. So like I'll usually find that player on the team and talk to them, and they'll like pump me up. And if I need to, when they get a little heated, I calm them down.
And and that's what you need to bring as well to some of your teammates, because whilst you're in that element, there can be some players who are completely stressy, and then suddenly the dynamics can change, and it's how you need to manage and support those to make sure you have that undefeated season.
Yeah, it's just like managing emotions on the field. So you have to kind of be aware of your players around you and just pick it up. I think center backs in general tend to be pretty aware of that, and center mid, like people in the field, will pick that up as they get older as well.
And in that sense, that you do play as a centre back, and there's many questions around centre back. But what would you say are the top three attributes or top three traits that are needed by a centre back?
Definitely reading the game and understanding where they're going to be, and then communication is a huge one. Whether it's you just organizing your back line or organizing your midfield in front of you. And third one, it could either be possession or just like a hard tackle abilities, like you kind of set the tempo on defense.
And in that sense, when it comes to your playing style as a defender, I think I've read you're creative-minded centre ball playing centre back. But do you still continue with that outlook that you are a ball playing and creative, or you are no nonsense? Let's make sure we get the clean sheet. I'm going to communicate, and we're going to keep this back line strong.
I'm a little bit of both, so I definitely don't like to lose like goals. Like in the game, I may not know how many goals we scored, but I definitely know how many goals were scored on us. But I think possession's a big key in keeping that clean sheet. If you're losing the ball when your defense is passing it forward to the midfield or the strikers, it's just going to come back down your throat. And I say that a lot to my goalkeepers. Someone's like, I've never heard, like, my goalkeeper will pick up the ball and I'll say, use your full 6 seconds. And they're like, we're like maybe one down or tied. And they're like, I've never heard anyone do that. And I was like, I'm doing it because we had 10 seconds, 20 seconds of pressure on us, and we need that mental reset, that physical reset to get up and re-win the ball without being exhausted.
And in that sense, when it comes to corners, you often find that there can be defenders who offer to go up for a corner, like to get up there, and then there's the defenders who like to sit back to make sure that they don't concede. Would you be the one who would sit back and be like, "No, you carry on, you get in the box"?
No, I get in.
Yeah.
I'm usually the zoner one right on top of the six, and if their center back comes up and their center back's a threat, I'm picking up them. I'm not going to let them score.
And in that sense, if you get frustrated when you concede, and you hate conceding, obviously as a defender, that's the worst thing that can happen. If there's a mistake off one of your teammates, and that you've conceded a few goals in a game, would you find yourselves like, right, it's fine, we can rebuild on this, or do you find yourself screaming at them like, you do that again and you're gonna be off? And do you find yourself getting frustrated with them in that moment?
No, because it's not going to help them at all. Usually, I feel like you get scored on as a team and you score as a team. So I'll be like, I looked at my goalkeeper one day. I was like, we're making it too easy for them, and she's like, you mean me? And I was like, no, I mean me, you, the other 5, 6 players in front of us. You let them get through you too easily.
You're already talking like a visionary manager, and we're already going to be on the sideline. So, if anyone's watching this, they might, think about, full-time coaching position for you. But in that sense, it's great that you have that outlook, and, that you do everything as a unity, and bring it together. And you bring a lot of experience, as part of that. And any team that's lucky to have you through all those undefeated seasons, and all the experience that you've had from playing abroad. Now, when you go abroad and you make those transfers, and they happen, when you go in as a centre back, have you ever found your time where you've gone to a club and they've gone, we don't need to play centre back, we want you to be like a right back or a holding midfielder, and it's that difficult to sort of comprehend at times?
I used to actually play left back for 7 years. I only got moved into center back my senior year in college, so it's actually a newer position for me. I usually just tell them to give me like a week or two to adjust to the different fitness levels, especially as outside back. It's a lot more running and just up and down. And then holding mid is just learning to check your shoulders a bit more so you don't get hit from behind a lot.
And in that sense, you're more adaptive and more open-minded to go, do you know what, I just give me that time, I'll adjust to it. I'm willing to do that because you've asked. And you're not one of these players who's like, no, I've come in as a centre-back. That's the only position I'm going to play.
I mean, center back is definitely my strongest position, but I tell players or teams I can obviously adjust if needed. I played holding mid in college and played it. I would practice it in training here a bit as well because I was like, oh, I'll play holding mid if you guys need some more defensive-minded players in the midfield.
And do you enjoy playing that, holding midfielder in the sense of trying to get the ball a little bit more and having that space to, ping out a 30, 40-yard pass or to open up the game a little bit more?
I enjoy the freedom of going forward a bit more in the position. I've played three back as center back, and there's just no freedom as much to go forward. And then every so often, the four back, I go in like an adventure where you just run through the whole team, but manage it.
And, it's that adventure. As long as you're taking on 3, 4, 5 players, and there's success at the end of it. You haven't lost the ball, or you try to beat 4 or 5, and then you're suddenly recovering and trying to get back in position. You can make as many of those free runs as you want to. And is it hard to make that judgment in that moment of when and where you should make that run? And England have just scored, which is a fantastic goal.
Oh, I missed it. I can just see the after effects now. Oh.
Or I didn't. I'm just going with fantastic goal, but all I saw was a couple of people screaming on my screen. But in that sense, just looking at the goal that has been conceded here, you're so close. You're in a World Cup final. You're giving it your all. Is it really difficult to concede goals in a moment in a game like that?
Uh, yeah, it can be hard. It's just gonna depend. Like I saw a few of the German players earlier when England first scored on them. They like immediately went into like pretty bad tackles. Oh, it's just a fight for the goal. Yeah, so they just went to the bad tackles. So it's about like refocusing your mind and then trying to figure out how to properly talk to your teammates to like get each of them on the same page. Like some players, like I get pissed and it gets good focused. Some players get pissed and it becomes dirty tackles. It's just like figuring out how to manage your mindset throughout the game.
And it's that mindset which is that importance which can take you over the line and certainly try to get those achievements and those accolades, which is really important. And it's everything that you've gone through. Now, when we talk about going abroad, you've actually been out to a lot of an amazing countries. Also, you come from the US, you've been out to Czech Republic, you've been out to Australia, you've been in Albania, you've been in Norway, and you've been in Sweden. Now, when it comes to a lot of those countries, you might find a lot of footballers might go out to those countries and they would enjoy them. But the one that, might be a highlight that people might not go out to is Albania. What was your time like out in Albania?
So I signed just a Champions League contract there, and that was why I wanted that. I think the league, my team would just destroy everyone in league, so I'd be a bit bored as a center back because they win goals like 9-0. But yeah, I liked just the travel. The travel for Champions League is crazy, by the way. It's a little crazy. But the games itself, like playing against Fortuna, was like definitely one of my playing highlight careers, and like coming in, I think I entered second half of the first game and just playing in that environment. And then I was playing against a Finnish national team player whose movement off the ball was just like really good. So I like the challenge of those games.
And in that sense, Champions League and the travelling, let's go into it a little bit more.
So we were playing in like our team was based in Skoder, and we drove 4 to 5 hours to pristine Kosovo. And we flew from Kosovo to Istanbul, Turkey, stayed in Turkey for 12 hours, and they put us up in really nice hotels. And then we went back to Istanbul, Turkey, and then flew up to Bolin, Denmark, and then drove from Bolin, Denmark to Horing up in northern Denmark. And then we were there for like an hour or two and had like our light training that night. and then game the next day, and then the day after that we left in the morning and did the whole trip backwards. And there was like an earthquake in Istanbul that night we were there, the first time or second time, one of them, and then there was also an earthquake in Albania the night before we left too.
And in that sense, I could be a big fan of your team, and I could be just looking forward to the game, and then suddenly the game is up and coming. I'm tucked in bed at night, and I've enjoyed it. But in that sense, you're in a hotel room, you're tired from travel, there's lots going on, and then suddenly an earthquake appears, and you're like, "Whoa, hang on, my personal life is coming into effect. I'm just a professional footballer." Was that quite a scary moment in that sense to be in that sort of situation?
I didn't realize there was an earthquake. I was like, oh, the building's just shaking a little bit, whatever, go back to sleep. Like, I've experienced a fair amount of them in California, like little baby ones. So I was like, whatever. And then like the group chat was blowing up, and I was like, what's going on? And then like the other it was all in Albanian, and I'm like, asked the other Americans what's going on. They're like, oh, there's an earthquake, and I was like, oh, I didn't notice it.
You just take so much in your stride, and yeah, I've had 6 undefeated seasons. Earthquakes, what are they to me? They're nothing really. But in that sense, traveling and being in different hotel rooms, and obviously traveling around the world, and at times it can literally be a point where you're living in a hotel and from hotel to hotel. Is that quite difficult to manage and maintain?
I mean, it's definitely nice when you end up with a club for a while and have like your home base, but like, yeah, I was in a hotel for 4 months at one point, Czech Republic for 2 months, and then like my contract there fell through, so I moved up to Norway, and I was there in another hotel for 2 months. The hardest part was like not having a kitchen, which like and being reliant to go out and buy food, which wasn't really something I was used to.
And in that sense, when you talk about your contract falling through in Czech Republic, um, you're in a hotel, your contract falls through. How does that land in a position? How does that land you in a position when that happens? Because any player could be in that situation, and suddenly, oh right, we're pulling out, and then suddenly you're like, oh, hang on, what about my contract? What's happening? Where am I training? What's the next move? What happens from here? I'm in a hotel. What's wages? And there must be a million questions. So how did that put you in a position?
Thankfully, I got lucky, and the team in Norway wanted me very quickly. I think I was stayed an extra of like 5 or 4 days in Czech Republic. But yeah, it was definitely a stressful time, just like trying to figure out what my next move was gonna be, and like they're basically like, we're not paying you all the extra wages. Like I had signed a contract, and they were like, we're not paying your extra wages, we're not paying for your flights, like it was written in the contract. So like that part was pretty hard.
And, it must be difficult to receive that, and especially when a club is backtracking in that sense, and they're trying to skimp and try and get you for as cheap as possible. And is it difficult in that sense when you're like, right, I know my value, but you're trying to get me for as less as possible? Is that quite difficult?
Well, part of it was they thought they were going to get more money than they did through the season, so they signed 4 internationals, and they found out they could only afford two, so they just cut two of us off. And they said something like they didn't want a center back that spoke a different language than the rest of the team. And it was like, why did you even bring me in then?
And in that sense, even though they've cut you off, but a club from Norway came in very quickly for you, do you feel like the club in Czech Republic missed out on what they could have had?
Yeah, possibly. It was like I don't know. They just they end up messing like screwing over the other two players that stayed too. So at that point I wasn't going to stay regardless if they wanted me or not.
In that sense, it can be quite difficult in terms of those relationships and those experiences within the football world. And, people don't see that, behind the scenes in terms of what you go through. But, a great move out to Norway, as you say, happened. How was your time in Norway?
I loved my time in Norway. My coach out there was Mike Spy or Spit. He played for Sheffield for years. I realized his last name's pronounced Spit after I was here for a while. He played there 10 years, was a captain out there, and he was a center back as well. So me and him would have like our conversations every day about positional things, what you look for, how to set up and different stuff like that. So that was really cool.
It's that benefit of having a player or a manager who has been in that position and can really complement and bring that to your game and enjoy that. But when it comes to, moving around, and although it's amazing to have all these experiences of, being out in these countries, different climates, food can be an attraction, relationships, different clubs, Champions League football, undefeated seasons, everything that comes with it, is amazing, especially when you wrap it up and you think about it. But in a sense, can it be really difficult to sort of come away from home and be like, right, I've got to keep moving around to keep my playing career alive and keep going? When in that sense, for example, like a player like that, and players in England, they come through as scholars and then they seem to land a life in England where they can play for 10 years, maybe around various clubs that stay in England, and then their personal life grows around that. But they've had that consistency of 10 years in England. Is it quite difficult in a sense of going, right, now I've got to leave America to find all these moves abroad and keep going?
I think it depends on the person. Like I've always like I went away pretty quick, like across the country for college, and like I wanted to get out and explore different things. And then so going abroad for me was just like another experience. And then there's plenty of American players who go abroad for a year and just like this isn't for me. Like I need to go back home. So it's just like figuring out your own personality and how good you are at like adapting and just like my first time in Sweden, I after like 5 months or 4 months in the country, I didn't need a translator anymore at practice. Like I would just be like, "Oh, we're doing this, and this, right?" And they're like, "Yeah."
And in that sense, I've interviewed quite a lot of Americans this week, and they just seem to take it in their stride. They're like, yeah, we're just going abroad, and yeah, we're just going to have these experiences, and we're quite happy to up and leave and go around. But I was speaking to another interviewee earlier on in the week, and we were talking about transfers and those moves. And she went out to Scotland and had a great time. They had an undefeated season, but she spoke about strategic moves. How the club, although it was a great experience in that undefeated season, and she was able to captain them and score goals, it wasn't a great move for her in terms of value or how she was seen by other clubs because the league wasn't on the same level as other leagues that she wanted to be in or what she came from. Now, in a sense of when it comes to your moves, do you look at it like that, or do you just look at it as another move and take it in your stride?
I definitely will look at it as more of a strategic move. So Czech Republic, I knew wasn't going to be the best culture and environment for me, but it was going to be a top league experience. So like that would look good on my resume. I know a lot of strikers will go to like lower divisions or like divisions where their team like isn't the best, but then the expectation is when you go there, you score a bunch of goals to like really get up your resume and your stats. So then other teams will be like, oh, this girl scored a bunch of goals here. She might do it here as well.
And in that sense, you've had 6 undefeated seasons, you've been a captain, you've got all this experience abroad, you've won league titles, etc. Does that play into your favour when you're negotiating a contract of, right, I've done all this, you're going to pay me more now because of it?
No, because unfortunately I'm a center back, so we tend to be undervalued a little bit.
Not what without the defense, that team is letting in goals and they're not doing anything. So if they're undervalued and having that undervalue and they don't want to pay you or buy you, let's just make sure they get no defenders and let's see how they strive after a season.
I know it's always so. It's usually their main thing is they'll sign strikers and goalkeepers first, and then midfields, and then center backs and like defenders come after that.
It's great to see where you actually fit in that flow and that priority list. Which just says where you really are really. But when you are with a club and when you are training, how does a typical week look for you?
Ooh, it depends. So in Norway, Monday morning, I ended up joining all the youth team players as well and training with them. So Monday morning, I would do gym session, and then Tuesday morning was technical session on the field. Tuesday or and every night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday night we had our like senior trainings. Wednesday morning again was technical. Thursday we had off. Friday morning was gym. Saturday session was like walking through set pieces and different tactics. And then Sunday was game. So like that was like my week there a lot. And then Czech Republic we trained every night. Sweden we trained every night. Um, Australia is kind of weird. They only train like 2 or 3 times a week, and they say it's a lot. And I was like, this is nothing. So usually I would do a lot more sessions by myself out there.
And in that sense, do you prefer to train in the night compared to in the morning or in the day? How different is that?
Uh, leaves too much time to think. I really train more in the morning a day, but it's just part of like women's soccer. It's a lot of people still have jobs, so they have to make it in the afternoon or at evening so players can work in the day.
And when you do have those days off and that free time, do you find yourself needing that time to get away and switch off from football? And how do you use that downtime for you?
Yeah, I definitely use it to switch off. Otherwise, my brain would just be like 24/7 soccer and it'd just like fry out too early in the season. So, usually, so in Australia, I'd go hiking on the off day. In Sweden, I would just go explore a random part of the city. I'd just like, oh, I'm just gonna go here today and check it out. And then Norway, I'd walk around the city too, and same with Czech Republic.
And in that sense, when you are abroad and you are going away, a lot of people talk about going abroad on holiday in that sense, but you're living a lifestyle out there and you've got that downtime. And when you've got a day off, there's so much more for you to do compared to a typical Norwegian person who's come from that area and they're like, yeah, we just got this and I've grown up around there. But for you, it's like, well, I could go off here for a day. I've never been there, and there's so much for you to experience whilst you're out there. So, going abroad and having those experiences of those cultures and those, different countries, have you enjoyed it and would you recommend it to other players?
Yeah, I've definitely enjoyed it. Would really recommend it. Just like as a way to like instead of just like quickly seeing a country, you get to learn the culture a bit more and like see the differences. Like when you go to different places, like Swedish people are kind of funny when you walk down the path. Like they walk on the farthest side possible from each other and like try not to make eye contact. Or like if you go to other countries, like Australians be like, "Hey, what's up?" and then they walk around barefoot all the time, like Brisbane and stuff. It's just funny, different like see little things like that.
And the complete difference in people and those contexts that you can be in, it can be quite difficult at times, sort of to be around people who sort of don't want to look at and make eye contact and are quite willing to walk the other way or furthest away. Is that quite difficult to be away from friends and family and to try and forge those relationships when away?
Uh, I usually do a pretty good job of like finding a few girls on the team that I like bond with, or like at least one. And I'll use them for my support system a bit more. And then I've had like really good friends I've made throughout the years, and I'll like call them if I need to like rant or just like talk to someone.
It's great to have that, support network, especially so you've got people to talk to, and especially when there's so much pressure and what you could go through in a week, and when another move could happen or that instigates. Now, when a move does instigate or a team comes in for you, how does that usually look around that?
Like when a team reaches out.
Yeah, so like they want to make a transfer, they're like, right, we're going to buy Lauren, she's worth this, and how does that usually feel around that time, and how does those conversations sort of happen between your current manager and your new manager, and how do you fit into the team? There must be so much around it.
It happened in Sweden. I'm trying to think. I got traded just after that midway point, and I like he like said we played against him in preseason. I think I didn't fully comprehend who I was going to because it was a team we beat 15-0, and I wasn't told that in the conversation. And he's like, "Oh, we'll be in Stockholm. It'll be a good opportunity." And then I got there, and I was like, "This was the team like we destroyed." And I was like, I ended up negotiating for a higher contract because I was going to have a lot more load on me because I was the older player on the team and I had a lot younger players around me who needed a lot more guidance and help. And I'm just like, I have a lot more responsibility here where my previous team had those leaders already in place.
And in that sense, when you are leaving a dressing room and you have to leave for a new dressing room, is it difficult to say goodbye to those players? And how does that? Can it become awkward at the end when you are leaving?
Yeah, it was definitely hard. I like found out and I like called my friend right away and she's like, I'm like, where are you? She's like, I'm not there. And I was like at her apartment. She's like, I'm with my sister. And I was like, I just got traded. And she like thought I was joking at first. So like that part was hard. And then some of the girls on the team are mad at me. I think they thought like I instigated the trade where I didn't. So there was like different things like that just to deal with.
And that can create a lot of difficulty between the team dynamics and those relationships and the way that has been perceived. You didn't instigate it, and suddenly that trade came in. But in a sense of you were discarded in a sense because you were being traded to a team that you beat 15-0 in that sense, and the coach was happy to trade you. Was that quite difficult to sort of comprehend?
Yeah, it was. And it was like, I don't know. I felt like I had created like a good environment at the club I was, and they were like, "Oh, we felt like your play was going downhill a bit," and I was like, "I wish you would have told me sooner because it would have been easier to fix before like it was a point where you weren't going to start me."
And this,
Um,
no, carry
yeah,
on.
and then actually we were undefeated at that point as well, and they actually ended up losing the next game after I left pretty badly. So like it does have an effect on the team when you get rid of players that do mean something to them.
In that sense, and when they did lose, they sort of proved the point as to why they had you, and maybe made them think twice about it. But when you went to that club, and it was a club that you knew that you beat 15 now, was it a time when you walked in going, right, we need this to change, we need to do this and that, and you felt that you had to lead the team through those changes because of what you had been through on the opposite side of beating them?
Yeah, I think at one point we were playing. I can't remember the full name, but the team's BP, and my other center back was 15 years old, and she kept getting like beat on the cross, and the player scored on her like 2 times in a row within like 5 minutes. And I look at her and I was like, I'm like, I'll take all the explicits, but I was like, you are a great player. Like, this player is not beating you. And I'm like, the forward's right next to us when I'm saying this to her. I was like, she does not beat you anymore. Like, you are a better player than her. You're smarter, you're faster, and you're going to read the ball, and she's not beating you again. And she didn't. Like, my center back picked up her game, and she, like, didn't get beat after that.
And you improved the morale of the team, and you picked players up, and you showed your leadership, and you changed that dynamic, and you took it forward, and then suddenly your value rose massively, and you were untradeable to that team at that sense. um, when you go into changing from manager to manager, is it difficult to forge those new relationships, and can it be difficult, especially when you have so many different personalities of those managers and coaches?
Yeah, it can be, especially like if you have such a different like idea of how the game should be played. Like that's one thing, and then like sometimes it's difficult if like a chairman or a director brings in the player versus the coach wanting the player. So it's like, oh, I didn't really want this player. Like I wanted someone else. So like that can be a difficult situation as well.
And that's quite a big topic in the news at the minute. Especially Chelsea at the minute. You know, they were talking about Romelu Lukaku. Was he actually brought in by Tuchel, or was he brought in by the sporting director? And then has he fit in? Has he complemented the plans of Tuchel? Why hasn't he utilised him? And then suddenly, they've sacked their sporting director this year. They sacked Petr Cech as well. And then suddenly, this businessman who's got no background in soccer takes over and then appoints himself acting sporting director, and he's the one who's going to make the signings on the behalf of that coach. And it can be quite difficult to sort of place that on you if you're not the one signed by the manager, and then you've sort of got to walk in like, well, I am here, I am a player, and you need to play me, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely now I tend to reach out to the coaches myself personally because I'm like, I really the coach want me. And I'm trying to think if I've gone into a situation lately where the coach wasn't the one who signed me. I think in Czech Republic, the coach didn't sign me, but he was great. And then the coach in Norway was the one that wanted me. So like I've only ever had one situation, and the coach was fine with it.
And in that sense, as much as we talk about, new surroundings, new environments, going into a changing room, which can be, refreshing at times, and, you developing great relationships with great teammates and great individuals, can sometimes walking in that change room and going, well, I'm here, I'm part of your team now. Is there times where you have seen players sort of look at you and go, oh, we got someone new in here. Oh, there's a bit of a challenge for our spots. Has that happened to you?
Uh, yeah, probably. I think I teased one of the players when I first got there in Sweden. She was number 9 and a striker. I was like, oh, I'm actually going to be number 9 this year. And she thought I was serious. I was like, no, I'm joking. But yeah, I think sometimes players do that. It was like I've done it on occasion, and I try and catch myself. I was like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Like you still need to learn how to fight for your position, regardless of who's in the change room.
Absolutely, and it's how you go into that change room and how you become part of that and forge those relationships. Now, moving around the world, there's many different personalities and different perspectives of how to take people, in different countries. You can go to one country and they can be quite outgoing, quite friendly, welcome you, as you've mentioned. Is it quite difficult then to forge those relationships when there can be such different personalities and they're not as welcoming as they would have been in another country, for example?
Ooh, I don't know if I've experienced it. I've had some players say Sweden's quite hard, but I don't know. Maybe, I think I'm like pretty outgoing since all the moving, and I'm also like pretty oblivious to some social cues like in the locker room. So like I don't pick up the awkwardness, or like I like love awkward moments. So like it's not like a bad thing for me.
And just taking that in your stride, already, there's many key selling points. So you utilize this podcast episode for any transfer that you make, because there's a sale tag and a purchase happening because of this one, because you've really sold yourself. But in that sense, when moving around the different countries, I've spoken to interviewees who said they've gone out to Italy and here there, but Italy stands out for me, because if I was in that perspective and I went out to Italy and we talk about nutrition, we talk about food, we talk about diets, I think I wouldn't cope in Italy, because I would be overweight, because I would just live off pasta and pizza, and you'd find me more in a restaurant than on the training field. But then if you put me in somewhere like Albania, I've got the worst eating habits ever. Whereas, they could come up with a traditional dish and there was no chance I'd be eating that unless it was something that was really like nice. But, going around different countries, there's so many different foods. And I think one country I could be overweight, one country I'd be massively underweight. Is that quite hard to sort of manage, to go out to different countries and eat the kind of foods and maintain your weight and keep that nutrition?
It's definitely hard when you go to the grocery store and you're trying to like read ingredients and it's all in a different language. So that part was different to like figure out in Sweden. Luckily, by the time I went to Norway, I kind of like the words in Norwegian and Swedish are quite similar. Albania, I did eat a lot of pizza, but it was like, I don't know if you know the difference between like American pizza and like European pizza. Ours is a lot greasier and fatter. So like eating those extra calories isn't necessarily bad because there's not a lot of cheese on it. It's more carbs. And just like figuring out different ways to go to the market and like keep your diet in check.
It's about, maintaining that and keeping that, nutrition and keeping your weight, which can put on a lot of pressure on yourself. Now, has there been a time when you've gone out to a club and they've had this massive focus on sports science and that nutrition, and it can really take a toll on you? Is that quite difficult to sort of, manage personally and psychologically?
I wouldn't say it was particularly sports science. They literally just like weighed me and gave my height, and they're like, "Oh, you're quite high in like BMI," and I'm like, I also have more muscle than most of the girls on the team. Like it's different. And even like I was speaking to an agent at one point and she's like, oh, you're quite big because I'm 64 kilograms. And I'm like, I'm a center back and I bench press a lot and I squat a lot. Like I'm going to be a bit bigger than most players.
And in that sense, having that physicality is, obviously really beneficial, especially for the position that you play. But when you were younger and you were growing up, did you play any other sports?
Yeah, I played softball and basketball growing up. So, and then I'd also swim a lot in the summer. Like, I like to see how long I could tread water for. It wasn't necessarily fun swimming. I was just like, how long can I tread water for with my thumbs above ground? And then I would do like just back and forth kicks, which is a little bit harder, or like egg beaters. So like, just I like to challenge myself.
And when obviously, if the team have a pool and they're training and they're getting the girls in the pool, when they finish and they're coming out and they're just watching you do those kind of things in the pool, they must be like, "Who have we signed here?"
Yeah, I think one coach was joking with me, and my college coach, we did like a beach session in the sand, and he's like, "You were like born to run in the beach." It's like, "Oh, those California kids." And I was like, "I never like played in the beach, and even like in the water, like I'm just like fine doing whatever." But it's just like one of my coaches like, "It's just your work rate." And it was the same thing. I came back from meniscus tear and had surgery, and I was top 5 in every fitness. And I looked at my coach and I was like, "I shouldn't be top 5." And my coach here, he's like, I told him that story. He's like, it's obviously just your work rate. Like you didn't want people to like outwork you.
No, absolutely, and it worked into your favour, and we really outshone and showed where you could be. But in that sense, if you weren't a professional soccer player, what professional sports would you be doing? Do you reckon?
I probably would have been a really good swimmer. I think when I was 12, I raced in like freestyle against my cousin at the time, who was 17 and second in the state in Georgia. And I beat him in it, like in I think 100 meters. I never did it like competitively, but I just beat him there and back. And I think he was going full out and pretty mad.
And when you put, accolades on your CV and you say undefeated season, that is definitely one that you should put on there under accolades and achievements. That should be well up the high top of your list for that.
I'm like not as good of a swimmer anymore. Like I tried to race the other day and I like was splashing all over the place when I was doing freestyle.
And in that sense, what you mentioned injury, is that quite difficult to overcome an injury, and has that been one of the biggest challenges that you face personally and professionally?
I've actually been pretty lucky. So the only injuries I've had that actually took me out was my meniscus, and I played 8 months on it before I needed surgery, and then sprained my ankle on my left side 4 times. But it's always been like I recover a bit faster. Like I sprained it, and I was back on the next game in 5 days.
And with that luck that you have had, which touch wood that you continue to have, and that you maintain that good shape, and look after yourself in that sense. What has been the biggest challenge that you have faced in your career?
Ooh, biggest challenge. Definitely would say the time in Czech Republic. It was just emotionally draining. Just dealing with like the environment we put in, just not being taken care of very well in general by the club. We were very stressed, so actually I put on weight when I'm stressed, not necessarily when I'm eating. So I was putting on weight there, and there was family issues going on back home. So like I just had a little bit of everything going on, and then just like when I went to Norway afterwards, it got a little bit better, and then when I came back home, like I was able to just reset and like lost all the weight right away.
It can be quite difficult because people don't see those challenges and those adversities and everything that you're going through, just personally, and then add on everything professionally, and then add around that entire circle of everything else that surrounds it. It just shows, how hard that you've worked and that resilience which you maintain and everything that you go through. But, what are the key values that you abide by as a professional footballer?
Definitely like just integrity, so leading by example and doing the little stuff. Like I joke that I never cheat on fitness, but I will cheat for my team a little bit. Like if it's close, maybe on the line, maybe out. I don't know. I'm just gonna play on to the whistle. So like just working for my team in general, and I guess in that sense. And then I'm pretty religious about my recovery methods and making sure I take care of my body.
And, in terms of that religious sense of, having that focus where you are religious to something and you're committed to it, do you have any superstitions as a footballer?
No superstitions. The only thing I've added consistently is I do a 5 minute jog at the end of games and trainings and weightlifting. It's just to get lactic acid out of my system a bit quicker so I can recover and not be sore the next day.
And that sounds very beneficial. Some superstitions can be detrimental to some players, and suddenly something doesn't happen before a game, and it throws them off entirely. But in that sense, where you might do a fitness session, or a coach has planned a fitness session and said, right, we're doing an hour of fitness a day, and that's it, that's what we're doing. And compared to another session where you might go, right, we're just doing games for an hour next week, and we're just going to work on a little bit of shape. If a coach said, right, and you've gone into a session, he said, right, we're doing an hour of fitness, does that throw you off, or you were like, okay, let's just do this hour? Because a lot of footballers would be like, no, 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 why are we doing an hour?
I mean, I definitely got mad a little bit at my coach in college one day. I was coming back from knee surgery and I was like, oh, we need to do fitness. And he's like, oh, I don't want to injure you. I was like, just 10 to 15 minutes. And then he got mad. And then we did an hour and a half of fitness. I was like, this is just going to cause injuries. So, like, I think if the coach is doing an hour of like smart fitness where it's like different paces and stuff like that, where you can vary what you're working on, like, that's fine. But like, I've seen some stuff that's like dangerous to like health and stuff where we'll do like 20 hurdles in a row up to your hips and you're jumping over that and you're just doing that for like 10 minutes or something like that.
And in that sense, when it comes to yourself and understanding yourself and understanding from your experience of what you have been through, and the kind of trainings that you've had, can it be difficult or easier to sort of tell a coach, be like, right, this isn't good for me, or is it quite distressful to say that to a coach because he's the one who's planned the session?
So usually I'll do stuff like that in person. So I'm not gonna say it in front of the whole team. I just like think that creates a bad environment and like creates like a distrust between the coach and the players. So usually I'll say something in person with them, like, hey, like I think this might have been a bit unsafe, like whether or not you agree. And like I did have a coach who got pretty mad at me in Australia about doing that, and it was just like he didn't want to start me one game, and he told me like, oh, you don't talk on the field is one of the reasons, and I was like, I just like knew it wasn't true. It was like someone's like, I hear you from the parking lot when I come in about yelling, like you yelling directions.
And in that sense, it was a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago now. It was Tottenham Hotspur. They just appointed the new fitness coach from Italy. He's one of Conte's trusted men. Very militant in his delivery. Very old fashioned in a way. Very disciplined. And even though they're multi-million-pound footballers, they're very fit. They're top of their game. They're being paid lots and lots of money to do it, so you should expect it. But it was like 35 to 38 degrees. They had done a couple of hours of training, and then I think they'd done 46 laps after training. If you were in that position, how would you have reacted to that?
I probably wouldn't have been happy, but I would have done it.
Because there's a player Sonny, and there was literally video of him after a game on the floor, collapsed. He was sweating. He had no more about him, and people are like, "This coach has literally killed his team." But a lot of other people were like, "Well, it's going to benefit them for running in the season. They're going to be fitter than the other teams. They're going to be more disciplined. They're going to be focused." So you can sort of understand that in that sense. So is it easier to sort of cover more distance when you're playing in a game as a team, or is it easier to keep possession?
Ooh, it depends on your personnel around you. Like if you have like the fitness and more players up top with a bit more pace, you can go back and forth and do it a bit longer. Then obviously using that as an advantage. Like one of my teams, the junior college coach is like, he didn't really get to pick the players. So he's like, I'm just going to make you all super fit 1v1. And we did that. And we did a lot of 1v1s for the first month. And then I've had coaches where we have like very technical players in possession and all of our fitness is like 5 minutes, 3v3 drills.
And in that sense, do you enjoy playing, smaller sided games and that fun enjoyment, or do you prefer 11v11 walkthroughs and a full sided during training?
I definitely like I think the small sided stuff will challenge me a bit more, a little bit faster thinking, quicker touches and stuff like that. And then it's really nice to like take that faster pace and bring it onto the big field. We did that in college where it was 7v7 all spring long. And then when we went to full field, we just destroyed everyone because we were so used to playing in really tight spaces.
And that's when I was at an academy, and we had a new academy coach. He came from England. He said, "Right, we're going to move everything off bigger pitches into smaller pitches. I want us working on faster rates, quick reaction times, and then we're going to explode it back out on those bigger pitches." A lot of the coaches who have been there long term were opposed to it and didn't really, like the style that the academy was moving in with the new curriculum and how he wanted to move to more small spaces and have those players reacting. And even like the parents started opposing it. Was like, well, we were always told by the original academy manager we were going to have more space, and more space is better, and having it. But you can really see the difference. And when that academy coach left, and the academy manager left, and then they internally appointed one of the long-term academy coaches as the new manager, he maintained that afterwards, and he was one of the coaches originally opposed to it. So you can definitely see the benefit of small-sided games and how that reaction time and then transitioning into a bigger game is really beneficial to players.
Yeah, I agree. Even if you watch clubs that consistently train on smaller pitches, so they'll train on like, I don't know what it is in meters, but it's 65 yards by like 110 is like the smaller sides. And then when they try and take that into the 80 to 120, they're fine. But when you consistently train on like the 80 to 120 fields and you try and go to the smaller fields, they struggle because their balls can go a bit longer. They're not sure how to deal with the like smaller field and the closer touches and the higher pressure.
It's those reaction times which really benefit you, especially if the opposition are not training that way. But it can be difficult when you go into those environments with teammates who have never experienced that and might not be as quick as you in that reaction time. And when they see it and you set those standards, it can really benefit them. Can it be difficult when you're playing alongside a player and they're not doing things as quick as they should be? When you go into training, from what you have experienced in terms of those high intensity, quick training sessions, and they're not as intense, can that be quite difficult to adapt to?
Yeah, it can. I've had players next to me struggle, and it just like sometimes it just takes like 2 weeks to adjust. So like you just got to keep encouraging them and give them little tips as you go. And then I've played one of my favorite players to play with was a Japanese player, and me and her would be in the corner and just two touch, one touch pass out of everyone and go out. And I was like, this is so easy because obviously Japanese players, that's more their style of play.
And in that sense, when you sort of compliment with another teammate, and you build that understanding, that relationship, that can be really beneficial when you actually are up against opposition. And when you're on that pitch, you got someone that you can trust, and the qualities of that player, and that you can rely on them and how you can utilize them. Having those relationships and understanding with a player like that can really benefit you when you're on the pitch.
Yeah, and exactly. And especially when I'm new to a team, I have like a notebook of like my teammates, and I'll say like this player is really good with like their back to the ball, or they want it to their feet, or they want it to space. And then like I have like a mental note of like their speed and knowing how far ahead of them I can play it based on how fast they can accelerate in a certain distance.
Again, it's that inner coach and that inner manager in you which is kicking in once again, and you're definitely going to make the heroes yourself. But before we let you go in that sense, if you had to say, right, these are three key takeaways, aside from the values which we've mentioned and what we've discussed, but these are three definite key takeaways of what you should experience from your personal life or professional that you've endured, what would they be?
Just like learning to be adaptable and then constantly learning. And I'm guess coachability is probably with adaptability, but you should be able to just be constantly able to adapt and just like deal with environments. So be adaptability. I don't remember what the second one was. I said, what was it?
Adaptability, then you went coachability.
Yeah, and then just like building your support systems are going to be the main things that can really help you.
That was really great insights and three great takeaways. I wish you the best of luck in your career because you've worked hard, you've had great experiences, and just having this interview and this time to speak to you just opened up so much more about you, which isn't out there and which isn't shared in the female game. Because it's not as open and there's not as much information available in that sense. But you've really, opened up and showed yourself and talked about those experiences. And you have a great personality, and the clubs are very lucky to sign such a quality player, just in that sense, especially in terms of that personality and the way you just take things in your stride and the way you adapt and how you just brush things off, and to you it's you can just take it into your game. But I'm very grateful of your time. I'm very thankful, and I wish you the best of luck in everything to come.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun to be on here.
No, it's been great, and hopefully we can do it again in the next few months in the future and see how things progress from there. But again, I'm really thankful for your time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.